still have the clipboard. That's what I can't get past. I quit 6 weeks ago. I blocked Denise's number. I threw out the folding chair, the thermos, the binoculars, all of it. But 2 days ago, the clipboard was on my kitchen counter. The same one. Same coffee ring on the back. Same pen clipped to the top. And the last page had a new entry in handwriting that wasn't mine, dated for tonight. But I should start at the beginning. The pay was too good. That should have been the first thing I questioned. But when you've been out of work for 3 months and your savings account looks like a countdown timer, you don't question money. You take it. $16 an hour to sit in a folding chair and watch an empty parking lot from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. No security uniform, no weapon, no radio. Just me, a plastic chair, a small booth that looked like it used to sell parking tickets, and a clipboard with one instruction printed at the top of every page. Log any activity. Do not engage. The lot was behind a decommissioned medical plaza on Ferris Avenue, the east side of town where everything closes by 7 and the streetlights only work on alternating blocks. 3 stories of dark windows, 60 empty parking spaces bordered by a chain-link fence with no lock on the gate. Across the street, a BP station stayed open all night, its fluorescent canopy buzzing like a trapped insect. I could see the cashier through the window if I leaned forward. Normal world, 10 seconds away. The property management company was called Bridger and Lyle. I never met anyone named Bridger or Lyle. I answered a Craigslist ad. I already got a call back from a woman named Denise, who sounded like she was eating lunch during the entire phone interview and was told to show up Monday. She emailed me the lot address, the booth code 0481, and the clipboard instructions. That was the entire onboarding. My first night was October 6th. Nothing happened. Not a single car, not a pedestrian, not even a stray animal. I filled in one line on the clipboard. No activity, drove home, slept until noon, and did it again. Second night, same. Third night, same. I started bringing a phone charger, a thermos, and a book I never opened because the booth light attracted moths and I couldn't stop watching them die against the plastic walls. By Thursday, I'd accepted the job for what it appeared to be a paycheck for sitting still. One thing did bother me. That third night, I'd gotten bored enough to walk to the medical plaza's front entrance and try the door. Locked, which I expected. But when I shined my phone light through the glass, the lobby floor was clean. Not just empty, clean. No dust, no debris, none of the slow decay you'd expect from a building that had been shuttered for 14 months. The tile looked mopped. Near the door seam there was a smell. Faint, sharp, unmistakable. Rubbing alcohol. The kind of sterile bite that belongs in rooms where things need to stay uncontaminated. I stepped back from the glass. I didn't write it on the clipboard. I didn't know what category it fell under. Friday night, the visitor came. 1:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I just checked my phone. I was half watching a video, volume low, when movement at the far edge of the lot pulled my eyes up. A man was walking across the lot. He came from the south side, where the fence meets the sidewalk. No car, no bike. Just walking, steady and unhurried like someone crossing a room they knew well. Dark pants, gray jacket, average height. I couldn't make out his face from 80 feet away, but he looked middle-aged. He could have been anyone leaving a late shift. cutting through as a shortcut. Except he wasn't cutting through. He walked to the center of the lot, almost the exact geometric center, and stopped. I sat up straighter. Paused the video. The man stood facing away from me, toward the medical plaza's ground floor entrance. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't waiting the way people wait. No weight shifting, no glancing around. He was standing the way furniture stands, hands at his sides, head level, perfectly, unnaturally still. I watched him for what I thought was 2 minutes. When I checked my phone, 11 minutes had passed. That gap in time unsettled me more than he did. I looked back. Still there. Same posture. I could see his breath in the cold air, slow and even, and I tried to match my breathing to his without thinking about it. I couldn't. His rhythm was too slow. Like someone in deep sleep. Except he was standing bolt upright in a parking lot at 2 in the morning. At 2:20 he turned. Not toward me. To his left, toward the east fence. He walked with the same measured pace, followed the fence to the gate, and disappeared north up the sidewalk on Ferris. 33 minutes exactly. I logged it and drove home. Insomnia makes people walk, I told myself, even as I double-checked my door lock for the first time in months. And Saturday night, 1:47 a.m., south fence. Same man, same jacket, same trajectory, across the lot to the same spot. I put my phone away immediately this time. I watched with full attention, trying to catch something I'd missed. And 20 minutes in, I found it. His shadow. It stretched behind him toward me, long and clean under the lot's single functioning light pole. His body was motionless. I was certain of that. But the shadow had a faint, rhythmic pulse, a thickening and thinning along its edges, like something breathing independently of the man casting it. Like the shadow was the living thing, and he was the projection. I blinked hard, pressed my palms against my eyes. When I looked again, it was still, perfectly normal, but I'd seen it. And I noticed something else, the asphalt where he stood, the same spot he'd occupied for 3 nights now, looked darker than the surrounding surface. Not wet, not stained, just a shade deeper, as though the ground beneath him was absorbing something. At 2:20, he turned left, walked to the gate, and left. Sunday night, I brought binoculars, set up the chair for a direct sight line to center lot, and waited. 1:47, south fence, same man. Through the lenses, his features sharpened. Mid-50s, clean-shaven. Canvas work coat from a hardware store. Plain dark lace-up shoes. No bag, no phone, nothing in his hands. His expression, when he turned just enough for me to catch his profile, was blank. Not peaceful, not distressed. The neutral face of someone who didn't know they could be seen. But his shoes were wrong. 3 nights of walking across an unswept lot and through the grit and broken glass along the south fence line, and the soles were clean. Not just unworn, pristine. Through the binoculars, I could see the rubber clearly when he shifted his weight. Pale, treads sharp-edged, like they'd come out of a box that evening, like they came out of a box every evening. He stood for 33 minutes, turned left, walked to the gate, left. Monday morning, I called Denise. Ferris Avenue lot? Yeah, what about it? Same individual every night, stands in the exact same spot for exactly 33 minutes. Should I be filing something beyond the clipboard? Is he damaging the property? No. Entering the building? The question landed differently than she probably intended. I thought about the clean floor, the rubbing alcohol. "No," I said. "Not while I'm there." Brief silence. "Yes, then log it. That's what the clipboard's for. The owner wants documentation for insurance and liability. That's the whole job." She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my bed, pulled up Google Maps, and searched the Bridger and Lyle office address from her email signature. The street existed. The building number didn't. Satellite view showed a laundromat where their office was supposed to be. I switched to street view and scrolled up and down the block twice. No signage, no suite number, nothing. I closed the app and stared at my ceiling. Then I opened it again and searched the Ferris Avenue lot itself. The satellite image was dated 8 months ago. The lot was empty in the photo, the booth visible as a tiny white square. But there was a dark mark on the asphalt near the center, roughly circular, roughly where he stood every night. 8 months before I was hired. 8 months before I started watching. I set an alarm for 10 p.m. That night he came at 1:47, same entry, same path, same spot. I had the binoculars ready. He stopped, stood, hands at his sides. That glacial breathing. At the 20-minute mark, his head moved, a small tilt, 5 degrees right. Then it kept going, slowly, smoothly, like a security camera panning on a mechanical track. He was turning toward the booth. I didn't lower the binoculars. I should have. Every instinct told me to break the line of sight, to look at my phone, at the BP station, at anything else. But something locked in my chest and I couldn't. Stopping felt like dropping a thread I'd never find again. So I kept the lenses pressed to my face and watched his features rotate into full view. And he was looking directly at me, not in my general direction, not at the booth as a structure, at me. Eyes aimed down the exact line between us like he'd calculated the angle. His expression was still neutral, still blank, but his eyes were open and fixed, and in the blue-white spill of the BP station light, they had a dry, glassy stillness to them. I couldn't tell if he was blinking. I didn't think he was. The minutes stretched. I don't know how many passed. The cashier at the BP station walked outside to empty a trash can. I caught it in my peripheral vision, the sound of the metal lid, the ordinary scrape of a bag being pulled, and for 1 second my eyes flicked toward her, toward the normal world. When I looked back through the binoculars, his mouth had changed. Not open, not a smile. The corners had shifted, barely. Just enough that the expression wasn't neutral anymore. It was the face of someone who had confirmed something. Someone who had been waiting to see if I'd look away, and I had, and now he knew something about me that I didn't understand yet. At 2:20, he turned left and walked away. Same route, same pace. He didn't look back. I set down the binoculars. My hands were trembling. Not dramatically, just a fine vibration in the fingers. The kind you blame on caffeine, except I hadn't touched the thermos all night. I picked up the clipboard. 1:47 a.m. Same individual. Same position. Directed eye contact toward booth at approximately 2:07. Maintained until departure. Expression changed during observation. I capped the pen. Read it back. Then I added one more line at the bottom of the page, smaller, pressed hard into the paper. He knew exactly where I was sitting, and he only moved when I wasn't looking. Tuesday, I almost didn't go back. I sat in my car in the apartment parking lot for 20 minutes with the engine running, watching the clock crawl toward 10:30 p.m. The reasonable part of my brain, the part that pays rent and keeps a schedule, said $16 an hour is $16 an hour, and a man standing in a parking lot isn't a threat. The other part of my brain, the part that had been quietly tallying details since the first night, said nothing at all. It just replayed the image of his mouth shifting in the binoculars over and over like a GIF stuck on loop. I went back. The drive to Ferris Avenue takes 14 minutes from my apartment, or I'd started noticing things about the route that I hadn't before. The way two of the streetlights on Millard blink in unison. The way the same gray sedan was always parked outside the closed print shop on 7th. The way the last quarter mile before the lot goes completely dark because the city hasn't replaced the blown lights on that stretch. I'd driven this route 9 times now. It was becoming routine. And routine, I was learning, is what makes you stop questioning things. I unlocked the booth at 10:55, set up the chair, plugged in my phone, poured coffee from the thermos, clipped a new log sheet to the clipboard. The pages from the previous week were in a manila envelope that Denise had told me to leave in the booth's lockbox every Sunday. I'd been doing it. Someone was picking them up. I never saw who, and that night I tried something different. At 1:30, I left the booth and walked to the center of the lot. I wanted to see the dark patch on the asphalt up close, the one I'd noticed from a distance Saturday, the one that showed up in the 8-month-old satellite photo. It was there, about 3 feet in diameter. Not a stain exactly, more like the asphalt had been compressed or heated. The texture was different, smoother, denser. I crouched down and touched it with my fingers. The surface was warm, not hot, just warmer than the surrounding pavement by several degrees, which made no sense. The temperature had been in the low 40s all week. There was no heat source, no underground pipe, no vent, just a circle of asphalt that felt like it had been sitting in afternoon sun at 1:30 in the morning. And I pulled my hand back and wiped it on my jeans. Stood up. Looked at the medical plaza from his perspective, from the exact spot where he stood every night, and felt something shift in my chest. The building looked different from here. Not architecturally. The windows were the same, the entrance was the same. But the scale felt wrong. Standing in the center of the lot, facing the building head-on, the ground floor entrance seemed closer than it should have been. Like the space between me and the doors had been quietly subtracted. I walked back to the booth, checked my phone, 1:43, 4 minutes. I sat down, picked up the binoculars, and aimed them at the south fence. At 1:47, he appeared. Same entry point. Same pace. But this time, watching him walk toward the spot I'd just been standing on, I felt something I hadn't before. In possession. Not mine. His. He walked toward that circle of warm asphalt like it belonged to him. Like I'd been trespassing on something private, and the only reason he didn't care was because he knew I'd move. He stopped. Same position. Hands at his sides, facing the building. I watched through the binoculars and waited for the 20-minute mark, for the head turn. It came early. 12 minutes in, his head began to rotate. Same mechanical smoothness, same steady pace. But this time it didn't stop at the booth. He turned all the way around, a full 180 degrees. Slowly. His body stayed fixed, feet planted, shoulders square, but his head rotated until he was facing directly behind himself, chin aligned with his own spine, eyes pointed at the south fence where he'd entered. It was the kind of movement that a human neck isn't supposed to make. Not quickly, not violently. He did it with the calm, frictionless ease of someone turning a doorknob, like his vertebrae were on bearings. I lowered the binoculars. My hands had gone cold. I watched with my bare eyes from the booth, 80 feet away, and at that distance his body just looked wrong. A figure standing in a parking lot, facing two directions at once. He held that position for maybe 10 seconds. Then his head rotated back. Same speed, same smoothness, forward facing again. He resumed his stance as if nothing had happened. At 2:20, he left. I didn't log the head rotation. I sat in the booth for the remaining 3 hours of my shift and stared at the empty lot. Whereas when the sun started graying the sky around 5:15, I drove home and sat in the shower until the hot water ran out. Wednesday night. I brought a camera. Not a good one. My phone on a small tripod I'd ordered off Amazon that afternoon with 1-day shipping. I set it up on the booth's narrow counter angled toward center lot and started recording at 1:40. He arrived at 1:47. Same entry, same walk. I let the camera run and watched through the binoculars. This time I paid attention to the ground, to the dark circle. When he stepped onto it, the asphalt didn't react. There was no glow, no vibration, nothing dramatic. But his shadow changed the moment his feet touched that patch. It sharpened. Every other shadow in the lot was soft-edged, diffused by the distant light pole and the ambient glow from the BP station. His shadow, on that circle, cut into the ground like it had been carved there. Hard black edges, no gradient, like a hole in the shape of a man. At 2:20, he left. I stopped the recording and played it back immediately. The footage showed the lot. It showed the timestamp ticking forward. It showed 1:47 come and go. But the center of the lot was empty. The entire 33 minutes. Empty. No man, no shadow, no movement. Just asphalt and silence, and the faint flicker of the BP station canopy in the background. I played it back 3 times. I scrubbed frame by frame through the 1:47 mark. Nothing. The camera had been pointed at exactly the right spot. I checked the angle twice before he arrived. And for 33 minutes, while I watched a man stand in the center of the lot with my own eyes, the camera recorded nothing but pavement. Even I sat in the booth and felt something I can only describe as a door closing. Not a physical one, a conceptual one. The kind of door that separates the world, where things make sense from the world where they don't, and you don't get to go back through it. Thursday, I called Denise again. She didn't answer. I called 3 more times over the course of the afternoon. On the 4th try, the number was disconnected. Not voicemail, not a busy signal, a flat, automated message. The number you have reached is not in service. I checked my email. Her messages were still there. The onboarding PDF, the lot address, the booth code. I replied to the most recent one. Denise, I need to talk to someone about the Ferris lot. Please call me. The email bounced within 30 seconds. Address not found. When I drove to the laundromat at the address listed for Bridger and Lyle, it was exactly what Google Maps had shown. A coin laundromat called Suds City, wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparer. I walked in. An older woman was folding towels near the dryers. I asked her if she knew of a property management company at this address. She looked at me like I'd asked her about the weather on Jupiter. Said the laundromat had been there for 11 years. No one else had ever operated out of the space. I sat in my car outside Suds City and did something I probably should have done on day 1. I searched Bridger and Lyle Property Management online. No website, no LinkedIn, no business registration in the state database, no Yelp listing, no Better Business Bureau page, no mention anywhere. And the only result that came back was the Craigslist ad I'd originally answered, and when I clicked the link, the posting had been removed. The company that hired me didn't exist. I was still being paid, though. That was the thing that kept me off balance. Every Friday, a direct deposit hit my checking account from an entity listed as BLMG MTLLC. The amounts were correct. Exactly what I'd worked, down to the hour. Someone was tracking my shifts. Someone was paying me. Someone was collecting the log sheets from the lockbox every Sunday. Thursday night, I went to the lot. I don't know why. The reasonable thing would have been to stop, to walk away from a job that was paid by a company that didn't exist, to watch a man who didn't appear on camera, standing on a patch of warm ground that predated my employment. But I went. I think I went because not going felt worse. Because if I stopped watching, the pattern would continue without a witness, and something about that, about him standing in the dark with no one to see, felt more dangerous than anything I'd observed so far. He came at 1:47. I didn't use the binoculars. I didn't use the camera. I just sat in the booth with the lights off and watched with my bare eyes. He stood in his spot. Same posture, same breathing. 20 minutes in, his head turned toward the booth. Same smooth rotation. He looked at me in the dark, or where he knew I was, and held. Then he did something new. He raised his left hand, slowly, palm facing the ground. He lifted it to about waist height and held it there, extended slightly in front of his body. Then his fingers moved. Not a wave. Not a gesture I recognized. His fingers curled and extended in a sequence, index, middle, ring, pinky, one at a time in order, and then reversed, over and over. A rhythmic, mechanical flexing, like he was playing a piano only he could see, or like he was counting. He did this for the remaining 13 minutes. At 2:20, he lowered his hand, turned left, and walked away. I looked down at the clipboard in my lap. In the dark, I could barely see the page. I clicked the pen and held it over the paper for a long time. Then I wrote, "What are you?" I didn't log anything official that night. I drove home and lay on my bed with the lights on, watching the ceiling, waiting for something I couldn't name. My phone buzzed at 4:30 a.m. A text from a number I didn't recognize. No area code, just 10 digits, no dashes. It said, "Thank you for your continued observation." On, I didn't sleep. Friday morning, I drove back to the lot. Daylight. I parked on Ferris and walked through the gate and across the asphalt to the dark circle in the center. I wanted to see it in the sun, to prove to myself that it was just a stain, just old asphalt, just nothing. The circle was lighter than I remembered, fainter, like it was fading in the daylight, or like it only fully existed at night. I crouched down and pressed my palm to it. Cold. The asphalt was cold. The same spot that had been warm at 1:30 a.m. in 40-degree weather was now cold on a 55-degree afternoon, colder than the surrounding surface. I pulled my hand back and looked at my palm. The skin was pale, where it had touched, like the blood had temporarily retreated from the surface. I stood up and looked at the medical plaza. In daylight, it was just a building. Beige stucco, tinted windows, a faded sign that read Ferris Avenue Medical Center. I walked to the entrance and tried the door again. Still locked. But this time, when I pressed my face to the glass and shielded my eyes, the lobby looked different. There were footprints on the clean tile floor. A single set leading from the entrance straight back to the elevator. They weren't dusty prints on a clean floor. They were clean prints on a dusty floor. As if someone had walked through and the dust had settled everywhere except where their feet had touched. As if the walking had happened after the last cleaning. Recent. Very recent. The footprints led to the elevator and stopped. The elevator doors were closed. I stepped back, looked up at the building's 3 stories of dark windows. On the second floor, one third window from the left, the blinds were slightly parted. Just barely. A gap of maybe 2 inches. And in that gap, in the middle of the afternoon, there was no light, no reflection, no visible interior. Just dark. The kind of dark that looks back. I walked to my car and drove home. I did not go to the lot that night. I did not go Saturday or Sunday. On Monday, the direct deposit hit my account. The full amount, as if I'd worked every shift. Someone was paying me for hours I hadn't been there. I lasted 3 days. 3 days of not going to the lot, of keeping my lights on at night, of checking the door locks twice before sitting down, and 3 times before lying down. I didn't sleep well. I didn't sleep much at all. I'd close my eyes and see the center of the lot from above like a satellite photo, and the dark circle would pulse the way his shadow had pulsed, thickening and thinning, breathing without lungs. On Tuesday, I got another text from the unknown number, same format, no area code. Your log sheets have not been collected. Please resume your schedule. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. Not after a pause, not after the 3-dot typing indicator, instantly, like it had been preloaded. Bridger and Lyle Management. Please resume your schedule. I put the phone down and walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank half of it, set it on the counter, picked up the phone again. The company doesn't exist. I checked. No reply. Not that night, not the next morning. The message sat there in the thread, delivered, read, unanswered. I screenshotted the entire conversation and emailed it to myself. Then emailed it to Marco with a message that said, "If anything weird happens to me, this is related." He replied an hour later asking if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I wasn't sure that was true. Wednesday afternoon, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove to the Ferris Avenue lot in daylight again, but this time I didn't go to the circle or the building. I went to the booth. I wanted to check the lockbox, the metal container bolted to the inside wall where I left the weekly log sheets for pickup. The lockbox was empty. I'd left the previous week's sheets in there before I stopped coming. Someone had collected them. But the box wasn't just empty. It had been cleaned. The inside surface, which had been scuffed gray metal when I started the job, it just was now smooth and had a faint chemical smell. Rubbing alcohol. The same sterile bite I'd noticed at the medical plaza's door. I closed the lockbox and stood in the booth. In the daylight, it was just a plywood box with a plexiglass window and a counter barely wide enough for a clipboard. I looked at the counter and noticed something I hadn't seen before. Scratches in the surface. Not random. Deliberate. Someone had carved into the plywood with a pen or a knife, and the marks had been there long enough to darken with grime. I tilted the counter toward the light from the window. The scratches formed numbers. 147 to 220 below them, in smaller, more ragged strokes. Don't count his fingers. My vision swam. I gripped the counter and read it again. The same time window, the same 33 minutes, and a warning. Not from Denise, not from Bridger and Lyle, but from someone who had sat in this booth before me and watched the same man do the same thing and had gotten close enough to notice the fingers. I thought about Sunday night, about the binoculars, about his shoes. I thought about Thursday night, the finger sequence, index, middle ring, pinky, curling and extending. I'd watched it, I'd studied it. I'd been doing exactly what someone had warned me not to do. I left the booth, walked across the lot toward my car. Halfway there, I stopped, turned around. The medical plaza stood behind me, 3 stories of tinted glass and beige stucco, and in the daylight, every window was opaque and still, except the second floor, 3rd window from the left. The blinds were parted again, the same gap, the same 2 inches. And this time there was something in it. Not a face, not a shape I could name. A density. The darkness behind the glass had a weight to it, a concentration, like smoke pressed into a space too small to hold it. And it was lower than it should have been. The gap in the blinds was at normal window height, maybe 4 feet from the floor, but the dark mass behind it was near the bottom of the gap, as if something was crouching, or as if something very tall was looking down through a space that only exposed its midsection. I got in my car. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table and spread my hands flat on the surface to stop them from shaking, and I made a decision. I was going back. One more night. Not because someone texted me, not because the money was still coming, but because the warning carved into the counter meant someone else had been through this. Someone else had sat where I sat and seen what I'd seen, and they'd left a message. They'd survived long enough to leave a message, which meant there was a version of this where you come out the other side. I needed to know what they knew. Thursday night. I arrived at 10:45. The lot was empty. The BP station was open, the cashier visible through the glass. A different one than usual, a younger guy with headphones. Normal world. Still there. Still 10 seconds away. I set up in the booth with no camera, no binoculars. Just my eyes, the clipboard, and a flashlight I'd brought from home. I also brought a knife, a folding utility knife from my kitchen drawer. I don't know what I thought I'd do with it. It sat in my jacket pocket like a small, useless promise. At midnight, I heard something I'd never heard before at the lot, a sound from inside the medical plaza. Not loud, not a crash or a bang, a hum. Low, mechanical, steady, like an HVAC system cycling on. In a building that had been closed for over a year, in a building with no tenants, no power contract, no reason for any system to be running. The hum lasted about 4 minutes and then stopped. The silence after it felt heavier than the silence before. At 1:30, I walked to the center of the lot again. The dark circle was darker than it had been the previous week. The edges were more defined. I could see the boundary clearly now, a sharp line between normal asphalt and the compressed, smooth surface of the circle. I crouched and held my palm an inch above it without touching. Warm. Warmer than before. Not like afternoon sun anymore. Like a heating pad on a low setting, when the warmth was rising from the asphalt in a steady, even column, and standing inside the circle, I could feel it through the soles of my shoes. I stepped back off the circle and checked my phone. 1:41. 6 minutes. I retreated to the booth. He came at 1:47. South fence. Same walk. But he wasn't alone. The second figure came from the same entry point, about 15 feet behind the first. Same pace, same direction. Smaller, just shorter, thinner, wearing a dark coat that reached mid-thigh. I couldn't tell gender or age from the booth. They walked in perfect sync, steps landing at the same time like two people hearing the same metronome. The first man, Freakidites, the original, dead, walked to his spot on the circle and stopped. The second figure stopped too, about 10 feet to his left. Not on the circle, just beside it. They both faced the medical plaza, same posture, hands at sides, heads level. My mouth had gone dry. I reached for the thermos, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip without tasting it. 2 of them. After 2 weeks of one, there were 2. I watched them stand. The first man was identical to every previous night. Same jacket, same build, same glacial breathing. The second figure was harder to read at this distance. I wished I'd brought the binoculars and was immediately glad I hadn't. The warning carved in the counter pulsed in my mind. Don't count his fingers. The binoculars would have made it impossible not to look. 20 minutes in, the first man's head began to turn. Same rotation, toward the booth. He locked onto me with those dry, unblinking eyes. But the second figure didn't turn. They stayed facing the building perfectly still. Then the second figure raised a hand, left hand, palm down, waist height. The fingers began to move. The same sequence. Index, middle ring, pinky, curl and extend. The same mechanical rhythm I'd seen the first man perform on Thursday, except now it was the second figure doing it. And from this distance, with no magnification, I could only see the hand moving, not the individual fingers. Just the shape of the gesture. Just the rhythm. I looked away. I looked at the BP station. I looked at the clipboard. I looked at my own hands, gripping the pen, knuckles white. When I looked back, the second figure had turned to face the booth too. 2 faces, 2 sets of eyes. Both pointed at me through 80 feet of dark air. The first man's expression was the same as always, blank, confirmed, knowing. The second figure's face I couldn't read. But their posture had changed. Yes, they were leaning forward. Just slightly. Just a degree or 2 off vertical. Leaning toward me. At 2:20, they both turned left simultaneously. Same direction, same speed. They walked to the east fence, followed it to the gate, and left. The second figure trailed the first by the same 15 feet. They turned north on Ferris and disappeared. I sat in the booth until 5 a.m. I didn't write anything on the clipboard. My hands wouldn't cooperate. The pen kept slipping in my fingers like my skin had forgotten how to grip. When the sky started lightening, I walked to the center of the lot. The dark circle had grown. Not by much, maybe 6 inches in diameter. But I'd been staring at it for 2 weeks, and I knew its edges the way you know the furniture in your own bedroom. It was bigger. And beside it, to the left, roughly where the second figure had stood, there was a new mark on the asphalt. Faint, barely visible, but unmistakably the same texture. Smooth, compressed, warm. A second circle was forming. I drove home, sat in my kitchen. The sunlight coming through the window felt thin, like it was arriving from further away than usual. I picked up my phone and called Marco. "Hey man, you good? You've been weird lately. I need to ask you something, and I need you to take it seriously." "Okay. If I sent you an address, and I stopped answering my phone, would you go there?" Silence, then, "Dude, what is going on? Just, would you?" Yeah, I'd go, but you're freaking me out." "I know, I'm sorry, I'll explain when I can." I hung up and texted him the address of the Ferris Avenue lot. Then I opened the screenshot of the text conversation with the unknown number and read it again. "Please resume your schedule. Please resume your schedule." Like a system prompt. Like an automated message from something that needed me in the booth. Not to protect the lot. Not for insurance documentation, not for liability. To watch. Whatever was happening in that lot, and whatever the circle was, whatever the man was, whatever was growing in the asphalt every night, it needed to be observed. It needed a witness. That was the job. That had always been the job. And now I understood why the clipboard said, "Do not engage." Not because engagement was dangerous for me, because engagement might interrupt whatever my watching was feeding. I looked at the clipboard instruction in my mind and reread it with new eyes. Log any activity. Do not engage. You can log any activity, document it, write it down, record the time, the duration, the behavior, create a record of observation, a proof of witness. Do not engage. Don't interact. Don't interfere. Don't break the circuit between the watcher and the watched. I was part of the mechanism. I'd been part of it since the first night. Friday morning. I woke up at 11 a.m. after 2 hours of sleep. There was a notification on my phone, a direct deposit, the full weekly amount, including Thursday night, which I'd worked, and the 3 nights I hadn't, and an extra payment. Small, $27. No description, no memo. Just $27 from BLMG MTLLC that didn't correspond to any hours I'd worked or any rate I'd been given. An amount that meant nothing to me. I stared at it for a long time, and then I opened the calculator on my phone and divided 27 by 16. My hourly rate. 1.6875 hours. 1 hour and 41 minutes. Not 33 minutes. Not one visit. 1 hour and 41 minutes. Almost exactly the time it would take for 3 visitors standing 33 minutes each, with a few minutes of transition between them. Friday night, there would be 3. Friday night I arrived early. 10:15. The lot was empty. The booth was dark. The BP station hummed across the street like a lighthouse for a coast nobody lived on anymore. The younger cashier was there again, headphones in, scrolling his phone behind the counter. I watched him for a moment through the plexiglass. He had no idea. He worked 10 seconds from something he'd never be able to explain, and the distance might as well have been continental. And I didn't set up the chair right away. I walked the lot first, slowly, methodically. I started at the south fence where the visitor always entered and followed his exact path to the center. I counted my steps, 47 from the fence gap to the edge of the dark circle. The circle was larger again. I could see it clearly now, even in the low light. Maybe 4 feet across. The surface was glassy smooth, like melted tar that had cooled into something denser than asphalt. The second circle, where the new figure had stood, was about 18 inches in diameter. Smaller. Younger. I crouched beside the original circle without touching it. The warmth radiating from it was immediate. I didn't need to hold my palm close. I could feel it on my face, rising in a steady column that smelled faintly of something I couldn't place. Not rubbing alcohol this time. Something older. Something mineral. Like the air above a hot spring or the breath of a cave. I stood and walked to the medical plaza. The front entrance was locked. I pressed my face to the glass. The footprints on the lobby floor were gone. The tile was clean again, mopped, sterile, as if the building maintained itself. But something new. The elevator doors were open, not fully, about 8 inches. A dark gap between the brushed steel panels just wide enough to step through if you turned sideways. They had been closed every other time I'd looked. I stepped back from the glass and looked up at the second floor. Third window from the left. The blinds were closed. No gap. No darkness pressing against the glass. Just closed blinds, like every other window in the building. As if whatever had been watching me on previous visits had moved to a different vantage point, or had come downstairs. I went back to the booth, set up the chair. Didn't pour coffee, didn't plug in my phone. I placed the clipboard on the counter, pen uncapped, and sat with my hands in my lap. The utility knife was in my right jacket pocket. My phone was in my left. I'd texted Marco at 9 p.m. Going to the lot tonight. If you don't hear from me by 7 a.m., go to the address I sent you. Don't go alone. He'd replied, "Bro, please just tell me what's happening." I hadn't answered. At midnight, the hums started again. Deeper this time, and I could feel it in the booth. A vibration in the plywood counter, in the metal lockbox, in the plastic legs of the folding chair. It lasted 6 minutes. When it stopped, the silence was different. Thicker, and the ambient noise of the street, the BP station's fluorescent buzz, the occasional car on the cross street 2 blocks south, the wind moving through the chain link. All of it had pulled back, like the volume knob on the world had been turned down a quarter turn. I checked the time. 12:06. 1 hour and 41 minutes until 1:47. I waited. At 1:30, I noticed the light in the lot had changed. The single functioning light pole, the one that cast the visitor's shadow every night, was dimmer. Not flickering, not dying, just dimmer, as if something was absorbing its output. The BP station canopy still blazed across the street, but the lot itself was settling into a deeper dark. The circles in the center were barely visible. The fence line was a suggestion. The medical plaza had become a wall of black behind the lot, and its outline visible only where it blocked the sky. 1:40. I gripped the clipboard. 1:45. Movement at the south fence. 1:47. He entered. The first man, same walk, same jacket, same pace. He crossed the lot to the circle and stopped. Behind him, 15 feet back, the second figure followed. Same sink, same dark coat. They reached their positions, the first on the original circle, the second on the newer mark, and went still. I counted to 30, breathing, waiting. At 1:49, the third one came through the fence. Taller than the other two. Much taller, 6.5 feet at least, maybe more. Thin in a way that didn't look like leanness, but like compression. Like a normal body had been stretched vertically and narrowed. They wore the same dark clothing, but it hung differently. Loose at the shoulders, tight at the wrists. And they walked with the same measured pace, but their stride was longer, each step covering more ground. And they reached the center of the lot faster than the others, despite entering at the same speed. The third figure stopped to the right of the first man, equidistant from the second figure. The three of them formed a triangle around the original circle, not standing on it but bordering it, each positioned at a precise remove. Facing the building, hands at sides. Still, I'd been right. 3 visitors. The math had been correct. And the correctness of it, the confirmation that the payment had predicted this, was more frightening than the figures themselves. It meant the system was consistent. It meant whoever or whatever was running this understood the progression, could quantify it, and had paid me accordingly. My role had been budgeted. For 20 minutes, nothing moved. The 3 figures stood in their formation and the lot held its breath. And I sat in the booth with the clipboard on my lap and the pen in my hand, and I did not write anything because there was nothing in any language I knew that could accurately describe what I was looking at. Then, at 2:07, all 3 heads turned. Not one at a time. Not in sequence. Simultaneously. 3 heads rotating toward the booth in perfect unison, at the same speed, stopping at the same angle. 6 eyes finding me through the dark. The first man's gaze I recognized. That dry, glassy fix. The second figure's face I could now see for the first time without binoculars, and I wished I couldn't. It was the same face, not similar, the same. Same bone structure, same clean-shaven jaw, same blank expression, a copy. A duplicate made from the same template but scaled slightly smaller. The third figure's face was also the same, but wrong. The proportions had been stretched with the body. The jaw was too long, the forehead too high, the distance between the eyes too wide by a centimeter that shouldn't have mattered, but made the face look like a word you've read so many times it stops meaning anything. A face in the uncanny valley of itself. All 3 raised their left hands, palm down, waist height. The fingers began to move. I closed my eyes. I closed them hard, so hard I saw phosphines bloom in the dark behind my lids. The warning carved into the counter was a scream in my skull. Don't count his fingers. I'd already counted them once. On Thursday of the first week, through the binoculars, I'd watched the sequence. Index, middle, ring, a pinky, and I'd counted. And now there were 3 of them doing it at once, and some part of me understood with absolute clarity that if I watched the sequence again, if I counted the pattern, something would change. Something would be confirmed. A transaction would complete. I kept my eyes closed. The warmth from the circles reached me in the booth. I was 80 feet away, and I could feel it on my skin, on my face, on the backs of my hands. It shouldn't have been possible. The heat was building, radiating outward from the center of the lot in waves I could track against my body. My jacket felt thin, my skin prickled. Then I heard something. Not the hum, not mechanical. A voice. Low. Male. Coming from the center of the lot. It said one word, and the word was my name. Not my full name. He used the nickname that only 4 people in my life use. The one my mother gave me when I was 6. The one that isn't on any document, any ID, any online profile. A name that exists only in the mouths of people who know me. It came from the center of the lot, from the direction of the 3 figures, spoken in a tone that was calm and clear and utterly without effect. Like a computer reading a name off a list. Like a roll call. I opened my eyes. The 3 figures were closer. Not at the center of the lot anymore. They were standing maybe 40 feet from the booth. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard movement. They had halved the distance in the time it took me to flinch, and they were still in the same formation, triangle equidistant facing me. But now they were close enough that I could see details I didn't want, and their fingers were still moving. All 3 left hands, all 3 sequences running in unison, but the count was wrong. Through the binoculars the first week, I'd seen 4 fingers curl in order, index, middle, ring, pinky, 4 beats. Now, at 40 feet, I could see 5 movements, 5 distinct curls, index, middle, ring, pinky, and a 5th finger I couldn't identify, extending from the outside edge of each hand, moving in sequence with the others. They each had 5 fingers and a thumb on their left hand, 6 digits. And the sequence was running. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over and over, and my eyes were tracking it, and I was counting it, and I couldn't stop, because the pattern was already in my head from the first time, and my brain was completing it automatically the way you finish a song. I grabbed the clipboard and held it in front of my face, blocked my view, pressed the back of it against my forehead and breathed. My breath was ragged, fast, nothing like the glacial rhythm of the figures. I was shaking. The warmth was still building. Through the gap between the clipboard and the counter, I could see the ground in front of the booth. The asphalt there, the ordinary cold, rough asphalt where no one had ever stood, was darker than it had been a moment ago. A new circle was forming, and under the booth, under me. I stood up. The chair fell backward. I grabbed my phone, shoved the clipboard under my arm, and pushed open the booth door. The night air hit me, and it was warm. Not October warm, not 40-degree warm, but warm like July. Like the heat was bleeding out of the ground across the entire lot. Mark, I didn't look at the figures. I kept my eyes on the gate, on the fence, on the BP station across the street. I walked fast, then faster, then I was running, my shoes slapping the asphalt. And under my feet, the ground felt soft in places, like the surface was losing its rigidity, like the lot itself was becoming pliable. I hit the gate, passed through, crossed the street, didn't stop until I was standing under the BP canopy in the fluorescent light, breathing hard, gripping the clipboard so tightly my fingers ached. I looked back at the lot. Empty. No figures, no triangle formation, no one at the center, no one 40 feet from the booth. The lot was vacant, the booth was dark. The medical plaza was a silent wall of black glass. The single light pole burned at full brightness, steady, as if it had never dimmed. The asphalt looked flat and uniform. No circles, no marks, nothing. I stood there for a long time. The cashier inside the BP station glanced up at me, then went back to his phone. A car passed on Ferris. The wind moved a plastic bag along the gutter. The world was ordinary and complete, and I was standing in it, shaking. I looked down at the clipboard. The top page, the one I hadn't written on, the one I'd clipped fresh that evening, was full. Every line. Filled margin to margin in handwriting that was mine. My penmanship, and my slight leftward slant. My habit of not fully closing the letter A. Every line was a log entry, dates, times, descriptions. But the dates were wrong. They started tomorrow, Saturday, and continued for weeks. Each entry documented a visitor count. Saturday, 4. Sunday, 5. The following Thursday, 9. And the numbers climbed. Steady, patient. 2 weeks out, 14. A month out, 31. The final entry, and the last line on the last page, was dated 6 weeks from now. It wasn't a count. It was one sentence in my handwriting, pressed so hard into the paper that the pen had nearly torn through. They don't need me to watch anymore. They can see on their own now. I dropped the clipboard. It clattered on the concrete under the BP canopy. I left it there. I drove home, I packed a bag. I stayed at Marco's for 2 weeks. I blocked Denise's number. I never went back to the Ferris Avenue lot. That was 6 weeks ago. This morning, the clipboard was on my kitchen counter. Same coffee ring, same pen. I know I left it at the gas station. I know I didn't bring it home. But it was on my counter in my apartment, and the final page was showing. In the entry dated for today, the one in handwriting that isn't mine, reads differently than I remembered. When I first found the clipboard 2 days ago, the entry said, "They don't need me to watch anymore." Now it says something else. The handwriting has changed. It's not mine anymore. The letters are too even, too measured, too perfectly spaced. Like someone who learned penmanship by watching a hand move, but never understood the small imperfections that make writing human. It says, "Thank you for your service." A new observer has been assigned. Below it, in the same mechanical script, is Marco's name. And next to it, a start date. Tonight.